What's up everyone, Raph here from B&C Camera. Camera settings are not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. The camera settings you choose are based on personal preference and your environment. This episode is going to be a fast one for you, hitting on ideal aperture settings for portraits. Of course, settings will always be subjectively based on the creativity of the individual. The settings I'll be listing off for you on this one won't be an ultimate answer, but will be handy for general purpose situations. And hey, if you found the video helpful and informative, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. If not, that's absolutely okay too. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on your ideal settings for aperture with portraits in the comments section down below. Cool? Alright, let's get to it. Now, the ideal settings for aperture for portraits is as follows. Again, bear in mind that this is for quick, general purpose situations. f8 or more for larger group portraits, f4 for small group portraits, f4 to 2.8 for portraits with a couple, and f2.8 and lower for portraits for one person. As a bit of a recap for understanding aperture settings, remember, the lower your f-stop is, the more light you're allowing to reach your camera sensor. Your aperture is one of the more crucial camera settings you will use besides your ISO and shutter speed. It will ultimately be the determining factor for how bright or dark your photo will turn out and what will be in focus. Okay, let's get into the details now, explaining why these settings would be ideal for your general purpose circumstances. An f-stop of 8 or more for large group portraits. When you bring up large groups, 6 or more people typically come up to mind. When doing group photos, these can be photos like a large wedding party, extended family reunion shots, high school reunion shots, class photos, etc. For these, you'll be squeezing in a lot of people in your frame based on where you'll be shooting. You'll want a narrow aperture so you can hone in and be tack sharp on all those faces. In terms of positioning, when you squeeze people in, you are most likely staggering everybody or having some sit while others stand. Doing this ensures you aren't cutting anybody off at the ends. Moving right along to an f-stop of 4 for small groups. A small group portrait is closer to 4 people, give or take. An example of this is parents and their 2 kids, or a close group of best friends. Again, to ensure that everyone is in focus, an f4 aperture should be perfect for portraits with this many people. Using this will allow for all people in the photographs to be in focus. Inversely, if you have the aperture a little bit too open, it might have someone out of focus, so keep that in mind. Getting a bit closer now, an f-stop of f4 to 2.8 would be ideal for couples. As we narrow down the subjects, of course the photo tends to get a bit more intimate and close. Consider the look you want for your couple, whether that couple be a legitimate couple, 2 goofy siblings, a parent with their child, you get the idea. If you want the clarity, keep it at an f4, but if you want a more dreamy look and having background separation, don't be afraid to drop down the f-stop lower to a 2.8 or even an f2. And of course, lastly, that one-on-one photo shoot with one person. An f2.8 or lower would be the most ideal setting for that. Why? Well, with one person, the pressure is off with having to worry about having everyone else in focus. One-on-one shoots will give you a bit more creative freedom based off of the look you want. More so now than the ones we had mentioned prior. You can start at f2.8, but if you really want to go for that dreamy look in the background but have your subject nice and sharp, you can't go wrong going below f2. And that pretty much wraps it up. Short and sweet. Now again, just remember that settings will always be subjective. You want to do some motion blur for your portrait but shooting in bright circumstances? Of course, have a low shutter speed and crank that f-stop up accordingly. See? It's going to be all situational. Always consider the shoot, the look that you're going for, and the know-how to change your settings on the fly. If you need refreshers on those, we have done a few extensive videos covering that, so be sure to check those out on our YouTube page. And thanks again for checking out the video. This is Raph from B&C Camera. Bye-bye now.